He's amazing. Okay. Right. I'd like to call to order the April 16th meeting of the New Canaan Board of Education. In front of you, you have the minutes from our April 2nd meeting, and once you've had a chance to look at them, if I could get a motion to approve, or Jen?
I have a motion to approve, but I have one change on under the budget update. The last sentence, instead of Dr. Leslie added that additional cuts to the budget may include program reductions, to change it to say would include program reductions or eliminations.
Okay. Are there any other additions or corrections? All right, so if I could get a motion to make that amendment to the minutes. Sherry, second. Jen? All those in favor? It's unanimous. And then if I could get a motion.
Well, I think Maria, you were abstaining, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and so actually, I think we've got two abstentions, so, sorry. Yeah, it's fine, because it's the majority of those, and so we're fine. But so it's, for those who are eligible, it's unanimous. And then if I could get a motion to approve the minutes, that is Penny, sorry. Second. Sherry. All those in favor? Okay. Any abstentions?
I guess we have to abstain.
Yeah, great, thank you. All right, so moving on, if we could you have the agenda for tonight's meeting in front of you. If I could get a motion to approve tonight's, Penny. Second. Katrina. All those in favor? It's unanimous, thank you. All right. So moving on to comments from the public. To ensure the public's right to be heard, the board has set aside time during the meeting for public comments. 2 minutes will be allotted to each speaker and a maximum of 15 minutes to each subject. Do I have anyone wishing to address the board this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on to reports and recognition. The first item is our health update. Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. I didn't see. You have to raise it higher. Sorry.
Christine Hezzy, 325 Main Street, New Canaan.
You want to move that down?
I don't
so
need it, do I?
Yeah,
Do I need it?
There you go.
Thank you. About a year ago, I sat down with the superintendent, and I mentioned to him that I understood that in order for any of the police dogs to come to the school, they had to give the school notification. And I said I didn't understand that. The whole idea, I would think, is surprise. And he was going to speak to the chief and get back to me. We never got together. I spoke to the chief a short while ago, and he said nothing had ever transpired. In view of what's recently transpired, I'm thinking to myself, perhaps something might have been discovered, perhaps a situation might have been avoided. I do not understand, I didn't then, I don't now, why you would need notification. The whole idea is surprise. Why would you need to be notified they were coming on the premises? If you have nothing to hide, you let them come. So I'd like your opinion on that.
We don't respond to public comment. We just listen at the meetings.
And at what point might I expect a response, or might the public expect a response?
I guess if you send it, I don't know.
Sure. Hi, Chris.
Thank you.
Be glad to respond to you directly.
Okay, sure. Perfect. All right. Any other comments from the public? All right. Seeing none, we will move on to the health update with Mr. Jonathan Adams. Thank you.
So as Jonathan's getting set up, I just wanted to welcome Jonathan back again to the Board of Ed meeting. As we started our review of our health curriculum, we did want to make sure that we continually have Jonathan come back to the Board of Ed and give you all an update on where we are. So tonight, Jonathan will be giving another brief update on our accomplishment toward the district goals. So I'm going to turn it over to Jonathan, who will be able to answer any questions that you have. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jill. And, twice in 1 year, the coordinators are starting to get jealous behind me here. But in all honesty, I do want to thank you for the opportunity to present to you tonight on the progress that we are making within our health curriculum. As Jill stated, I am here tonight to provide you with a brief update on the ongoing work that supports the district goals. I've already shared the work we've accomplished during the first half of the year, and tonight will be a continuation of that work. Before I get started, of course, I would like to thank some of the individuals that have come out tonight just in support. Of course, the coordinators that are here, who we all know and should be familiar with, the administrators that we see in the back too, and Mike Tisha also, who is a health education teacher over at Sachs Middle School. Some other notables are members of the health committee that we have who aren't here, but Christina Orlando and Jay Egan, as well as other teachers around the district that support that work. So as we get started, I do want to share that we are proud that we are accomplishing the district goals. Following the Understanding by Design, the UBD model, where we've drafted units of study for grades 3 through 5, emphasizing a skills-based approach to teaching health education. Determining best models of instruction and scheduling for implementing health ed instruction at the 3rd and 4th grade. We are in the process of looking into that. We're addressing state mandates through the health curriculum, and we're also working and continuing to work to ensure that all information related to our curriculum will be transparent to parents and the community. I do want to take a minute to revisit this slide, which we should be familiar with, and it's really not to be redundant because this vision we do believe is a significant one that will impact our students now and in the future. To just reinforce it also, I've had the opportunity this year to go around the district and present this slide and the importance of skills-based health education to teachers, parents, administrators, and just constantly reinforcing the message of the value that we see within the skills that are necessary for students to build upon their health literacy. Our curriculum work involves the alignment of the National Health Education Standards that we have on the left, which means that the skills become the emphasis of the curriculum. Simply put, it's skill acquisition, the ability for students to acquire the skills with utility to enhance their health and the health of others. Research examining effective health education program reveals that skill development is a key element, and that the curriculum is designed that supports students' development of skill proficiency as a primary purpose of health education. As I've presented the slides many times throughout the year, I've also witnessed that this vision board that basically we're using is starting to really take shape, and I'm starting to notice common language that's actually happening between myself and teachers, which really speaks to the work that we're doing and the process and basically taking place. Another familiar phrase that we have that I'd like to continue to get familiar with, all of us too, is that skills build health. If you remember from the first Board of Education we gave last year, Jay Egan and myself, we began with a quote from the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching that stated, "No knowledge is more crucial than knowledge about health, for without it no other life goal can be achieved." And it is true that yes, it does begin with knowledge, but we also know that from health behavior theory that knowledge alone does not just change behavior. It has to be combined with the skills and the overall attitudes that's overall going to produce positive health behavior outcomes, reinforcing and improving health literacy in students. One of the things that's basically taking place that I'd like to share with you is that there is a global revolution taking place of schools transitioning to skills-based health education. Shape America, which is the Society of Health and Physical Educators, that is our national organization that advocates for quality health and physical education across the country. Our president of Shape America, Judy Lobianco, has stated at her keynote address at the National Convention this year that this is the year for health education. We've seen over the years a groundswell of advocacy efforts, professional learning opportunities taking place, and it's only growing by the day. I also had the opportunity through Shape America, our national organization, to be a panelist on a Twitter chat with other health advocates and health educators across the country. I share that with you only because the professional learning opportunities and the advocacy efforts that are taking place, I'm proud to share that we are on the front lines of that work, and our district is in support of that. As we look at the work that we're actually doing, too, within the health curriculum, it does start with health literacy. And we look at how we can blend those connections and strengthen those connections with other areas in mind. The first being SAPL, the Social, Academic, and Personal Learning Framework, and Emotional Intelligence. Dr. Susan Bliss and myself are constantly communicating back and forth, looking at the commonalities and looking at the connections that we see between that framework, the emotional intelligence work that the district is doing, as well as within the health curriculum work. The other being digital literacy, which we're going to hear about in a little bit, too, from Mary Hannah. And we constantly communicate, too, to see how all of these three are connected and really looking at how we impact, and the focus point that we always have within teaching is impacting the whole child. Some of the work that we've been doing within gathering information and receiving feedback. It starts with a health education committee that's comprised of teachers and administrators, and we're meeting consistently to discuss curriculum and alignment. We meet and discuss the overall skills that we feel are necessary for our students, and we look at the alignment that we have throughout it. As we're starting to gather that feedback at the beginning of the year, I worked with a group of individuals to have a parent focus group, an elementary parent focus group. Myself, Jay Egan, Dr. Lutzy, Dr. Carenti, and Susan Bliss all led this focus group with parents to get their feedback on the needs that they feel are most important for the students at the elementary level in terms of their health. Following that, we also held a focus group with elementary administrators and teachers where we're gathering more information, and we're also now discussing how do we best see health education fitting into and being implemented at the elementary level. The feedback and some of the commonalities that we've seen from both the parent focus group and the elementary administrators and teacher focus group are some of the health issues or health needs that they see most necessary to be addressed. And some of them that came across were conflict resolution strategies, developing peer and healthy relationships, problem solving and decision-making skills, healthy and appropriate communication while gaming. And it has become apparent that the connections we're seeing within health, SAPL, emotional intelligence, and digital literacy, that it only makes sense to strengthen those connections with having a blended experience for students. The last and one of the most important pieces of feedback that I receive is at the Curriculum Leadership Council, CLC. This is an opportunity that I have to go amongst a group of educators, leaders in their curriculum work, and they get to be my critical friends and critique the work that I have put together that's going to impact our students. I found this to be some of the most valuable feedback, as it has opened my eyes to other opportunities that maybe I haven't seen, that they may have been looking at through another lens. At first, I was really nervous to present to CLC and share some of the work that I had, but now I look forward to it, as I've done it several times, and it's just some of the most valuable feedback I have gotten. So an example that I'd like to share with you is really what a skill development might look like in the classroom. It does start and it begins with some steps of acquiring a health skill. In order for students to develop the confidence and competence to acquire these skills, we must first take the time to teach them the steps, framing out the skill with them. So what I'm going to share with you are those steps that is not just taught in one lesson, but taught throughout an entire unit, as we will look. It first starts with introducing a skill and its relevance and relationship to the content. So in this content, we could think about maybe personal safety in this regard as being the content piece. As we introduce the skill, we're going to introduce the skill of decision-making. And we look at a model of decision-making known as the Great Decision-Making Model. So we could think about maybe a title being Making Great Decisions. Let's make great decisions. And kind of thinking about reinforcing the strategy with students. When we look at it, it starts now with breaking down the steps or presenting the steps to students. And so simply put, the first one there in the acronym of GREAT in that decision-making model is to give thought to a decision or problem, for them to identify the situation and what needs a decision to be made. The second is reviewing all their options and predicting a list of the positive and negative outcomes that might come from that. And the third is evaluating the outcome of each option. This is one of the most crucial ones, for them to analyze the possibility of also needing assistance. We will provide students with some guiding questions that will give them the opportunity to analyze it a little deeper. So they'll think of some of those examples, which would be, are you having trouble coming up with a healthy option? Is your safety or someone else's safety at risk? Would this decision get me into trouble? And one of my most favorite questions here is, would my parents be disappointed if I were to make that decision? Having a daughter, I can see posting this poster up in her bedroom and having that conversation, making sure we're reinforcing good decisions every day. Next, they will assess and choose the best option and make the decision that's best for them. If they were to happen to, while they analyze those, answer yes to any of those, then they're encouraged to seek help from a trusted adult and identify who that trusted adult might be in their life. As they go through this process and they choose the best option, the last is for them to have an opportunity to reflect and think it over afterwards. Would they make the same decision next time? Are they happy with the decision that they made? As teachers then, you can see that going through those steps takes some time. It's not just something that happens within just a few minutes with students. We really need to reinforce those steps, breaking it down one by one. Third, as teachers, we want to model this skill for students. In the same way within any skill, we need some type of modeling to go along with it. If you were to think of a skill of swinging a baseball bat, I remember my father just standing there swinging it, modeling how to actually swing a baseball bat before I actually got to swing that baseball bat. In the same way, we would provide exemplars for students and model how to go about effectively creating and developing great decisions. We make decisions every day, sometimes without even thinking about it, and it's not so much the decision that's made, however, the process that goes along with that. And we really want to emphasize that process with students. After it's modeled, we need to give students opportunities to practice the skill. So they will take time, could be over the course of a few lessons, where they're actually practicing the skill. Through this practicing, we are providing the teachers feedback and reinforcement. We could see that feedback being from teacher to peer or even peer-to-peer feedback throughout that. These steps to acquire this health skill, as well as the great decision-making model, are all backed up with effective research surrounding it. So our implementation plan that we have for moving forward into the 2018 and 19 school year is to implement approximately 10 health education lessons in 3rd and 4th grade classes. We plan on doing this by using 2 health teachers at Saks and myself to deliver these lessons. We're planning on to implement them by trimester, following the 6-day rotation with the possibility of health being delivered on an A and/or D day, and constantly thinking about how we can maintain communication, consistent communication with teachers throughout the year. So if you think about a school possibly maybe getting that health instruction at the beginning of the school year or at the end of the school year, we're developing plans in place so that when we leave and they have experienced those 10 lessons, those lessons don't just fall off the table, but yet they continue to live and breathe within the school. And why are we doing this? When we did our curriculum analysis and we identified gaps, this was one of the biggest gaps that we saw, was elementary health education. And we have plans throughout the 2018-19 school year to draft and pilot some K-2 lessons throughout the year. And we're going to continue to work with colleagues to find the through lines and the blended experiences for students. The next steps that we have from now until the end of the year is start to finalize the units and the lessons that are going to be happening in 3rd and 4th grade. We can think about that as we think about it, as a cohort of students moving forward from grade to grade. You may be familiar with when FLES was rolled out in terms of how they developed that cohort of students and had that in the back of their mind when thinking about it. We're continuing, or will continue, to receive feedback from the Curriculum Leadership Council, the Health Committee, elementary teachers, administrators, parents. We're looking for that feedback to develop the most effective health curriculum that we can for our students. And we're going to continue to examine the scheduling models of instruction effective for implementation for the 3rd and 4th grade instruction. I am proud to say that we've made great progress within our health curriculum so far. I'm excited to see it move forward at the elementary level, and I look forward to the continued work ahead that we have for our students. So with that in mind, I will
Thank you, Jonathan.
take a sip and ask some questions.
I'm sure there might be a few. All right, well, let me open it up to questions from anyone on the board. Maria?
So how many hours of health do the students currently get, and how many will they get? What's the change?
So at the elementary school, currently, the only health instruction that they would be receiving would be within their physical education setting. So at the elementary school, we identified that there wasn't health education being implemented there. So the 10 lessons, if you break them down, there would be 30-minute blocks of time that we're looking at. So if you were to calculate that out, we would have 10 lessons for 30-minute lessons at a time.
And then what does that replace? What won't be taught in those blocks of time?
So what we're planning on doing as a pilot for next year is that it would be integrated into one of their specials. And so for that trimester, so if it was being delivered over at West for trimester 1, we would unleash the 3 health teachers to go over to West. They would hit 4th grade during one of their special blocks, and that would allow us to hit 3 classes at a time, and that's what's allowing us to do the A and the D day. So what it might go in is in replace of like an ICT, so they might not go to the computer lab for the full hour block, so they'd only be going to the computer lab for the half-hour block. So we've been having focus groups, talking with the elementary administrators as well as the teachers, trying to find out what would be the best way to roll this out as a pilot for next year. This seemed to make the most sense to them, but what the feedback we do get from the elementary teachers is that they would like to sit and listen to all the lessons because they find that they would be able to follow through and carry through with some of the ideas that are being taught in health. And that's where I think it would be important to have Jonathan continuing to communicate with them throughout the course of the year. So hitting one of their team meetings, going through the units of study, going through the lessons, making sure that they're aware of what's being taught. They're always welcome to stay in the classroom when the health lesson is being delivered so that they could hear that, and then making sure that it gets continued on throughout the course of the year. I think what you'll hear from Mary is also that blended experience that we're trying to meet with the students through digital citizenship as well as the health curriculum. And you'll also see some connections over to SAPL.
And how many, I'm sure every parent in elementary school would like input, but how many were in the focus group? How many parents total took part in the focus groups?
The first focus group that we gave with parents at the beginning of the year, say, was approximately about 9 or so that we had so far. And we do have plans in place to continue that, those focus groups also. Right now, even with the elementary schools, before the break, we were able to go to 2 of the schools, East and South School, and now coming into the rest of this month, we're looking to go over to West School and have that focus group too. So.
And are you integrating the sexual assault and awareness component, and how is that going to work? Especially for the younger kids, I imagine parents would want to know.
So we're looking at alignment within our personal safety unit. And some of the skills, one there of decision-making as well as interpersonal communication has been brought up. And we're looking at framing it in the same way that we did within 5th grade, building that foundation of healthy relationships and providing that safe atmosphere for students as they develop those skills in order to do so. So we could see that being rolled out next year, and we could also see communication going out with parents 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade in the same way that I was able to hold those presentations for 5th grade parents this year.
Anyone else? Penny?
So is this, in terms of the amount that you're looking at getting to eventually, is it one trimester, the 10 lessons that you would have for 3rd grade, and then another set for 4th grade?
So we're looking at 10 lessons for 3rd grade and 10 lessons for 4th grade in that trimester. So each of those grades will just receive the 10 lessons.
And that would be the full rollout?
That would be the full pilot for that school for year 1. Yep.
Okay.
And if we look at it across a trimester, if it's A or D day, we can see that that would go across once or twice within a rotation cycle. So, as it builds up, it's not that it's just happening in a week, day after day, but over the course of those rotations, it would take place. So every A day or every D day.
And is that about what you're looking at for first and second grade when we do that?
I mean, as I think, as we look further into it and continue to receive that feedback, it could look similar to that, with the hope to potentially expanding more at the middle school that we have too. So that's all work going forward to the 2018 to kind of gather that feedback and see where we can find those areas where we can implement.
Sherry?
Hi, Don. First, I love the skill-based approach, so I think this is a great improvement on the curriculum. I'm just curious how we measure the efficacy of the health curriculum, and if there's any way to, as we scan our environment, to kind of correlate, any issues that we may see through guidance, counseling, and, these different areas of the health education that we're trying to address.
Yep. So constantly communicating with Susan Bliss, and we're constantly back and forth collaborating on seeing that. As I talked about that blended experience that we could see. So there's so many connections. SAPL framework was written also with the health standards in mind too. So there are those connections that we see. Decision making being one of the strands of SAPL, as well as one of the health skills that we see. And then in terms of that efficacy piece, really getting that feedback, say for instance after trimester 1, going back to the teachers and seeing the feedback that they're getting from students and the feedback that we can get to actually look and see how that's actually being rolled out. For me, I'd love to see it being lived out throughout the year, so I don't want after we leave West School for trimester 1 for that to be forgotten about. So that communication is going to be critical for the efficacy to continue throughout the school year. So I think, I'm looking forward to that feedback and seeing the rollout and seeing the feedback we get from students after that trimester 1. And then I'm sure, of course, reporting back here. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to it.
Other questions? Penny?
So will the 10 lessons be posted online someplace for the community or parents to see when it's finalized?
So we are in the process of developing that website and actually getting that communication being transparent as possible with parents. So along with it possibly being posted, also being presented to parents in the same way that I held a 5th grade presentation at the beginning of the year as an overview of our 5th grade health curriculum.
Okay. Well, I think that's great. And I just wanted to say, these topics are so pertinent and wonderful, and I look forward to seeing how you roll them out. There was just the article I was reading this weekend, I think it was in the Wall Street Journal, talking about how healthy eating is actually good psychiatrically. And some amazing research that's been coming out of people looking at those connections. And here we are, we're talking, you're not drawing the relationship in it right on this one slide, but certainly you have both right there, and I think that's terrific.
Thanks. Appreciate that.
I actually want to just say that I'm envisioning in the future, probably in the fall, where you're almost going to be able to do a blended presentation for parents of 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, where you'll be able to integrate what's happening in digital literacy, what's happening in health literacy, and then also what's happening in SAPL. So we did a changeover with those elementary report cards that do align to our SAPL standards, and that's been a really nice feature. And now we're getting such wonderful feedback from the elementary teachers, and I think it just allows us to continue to grow and help to be transparent with the teachers, but also transparent with the parents as well, and it's been very helpful.
Maria?
I think maybe this is for Jill. I just noticed the SAPL standards are on the report card. Is that something you could explain? I don't know, is it K through 5? Maybe you could just let parents know if they...
Sure. So Susan Bliss will be back in May to do a presentation. It would have been nice to have health literacy, digital citizenship, as well as SAPL in this evening, but I think that would have been too much. So Susan will be back in May. We can make sure that we have her include a slide on all of those indicators on the report card, but it really goes into responsible decision making. It has some of those behaviors that are typical at the elementary level, but it was just nice to be able to align it over to those SAPL indicators and those 4 standards that we have within SAPL, and then kind of expand out on those standards. But I think that would probably be part of Susan's presentation, where she could really go through. What we've done now is really listed out what those indicators are, where they relate in with SAPL, and actually where they would even relate in with Ruler if we were to roll forward with Ruler. So you can see that whole nice integration there.
And is it, I know you did 5th grade in the fall, and you're talking 3rd and 4th, and then 1st and 2nd. Are you doing K through 12 health curriculum, or just K through 8?
Our current curriculum right now is 5 through 12, and what we're looking at next year is 3 and 4, with then in the same process that I did this year within piloting some of those lessons within a 1st grade, 2nd grade class, getting that feedback, going through the same process in terms of seeing where it might best be fit, and then looking at with plans of the following year to see a full K-12 implementation.
So will the high school health change in the near future, or is that pretty much set?
We do see revisions being made in the curriculum, as well as some possible graduation requirements changing within that too within the near future.
Right. We, in the conversation, thought that the best approach would be to sort of work down and then to go back up to the high school when we
Right.
have that K-8 program in place to see what changes then would flow naturally from that. So
And
in
when
time, it'll happen.
Okay.
And when we rolled out the digital citizenship, we did something very similar in that regard. So we found ourselves looking at the cohort of children. So the current cohort of children who are freshmen in the high school started with that digital citizenship curriculum as 6th graders. And so we were able to just kind of adjust the curriculum, and that's what helps it to keep it alive, you know, that you're continually tweaking it. So here's the 6th grade, and then as they move into 7th graders, that curriculum would look slightly different. So on year 1, that curriculum might be very similar for 6th, 7th, and 8th, and then year 2, it's going to adjust slightly for that 7th grade, you know, as those 6th graders go into 7th, and then those 6th graders go into, you know, those 7th graders go into 8th grade. So you'd almost envision that's going to happen with the health curriculum as well, that we're going to have to continue to make adjustments as time goes on.
Anyone else? Thank you, Jonathan. I just wanted to make a comment that, you know, your presentation sort of outlines how important the curriculum development that this district does and how it makes our curriculum responsive to the community needs and to the parent and student needs, while also being, you know, responsive to mandates and what we are required to do from the State Board of Education. So thank you. I appreciate it.
So as we're switching over, Mary Hannah will be doing the full digital citizenship update this evening. Unfortunately, Mr. Salvestrini had an emergency at home and was not able to attend this evening. So we do apologize, but Mary has been working really hard on the digital citizenship curriculum 5 through 8 and has worked very closely with Mr. Salvestrini on the entire presentation. So we feel that we're ready to move forward with a K-12 update to the Board of Ed, and once again, bringing it back to our district goals and how we're moving forward in that area. So thank you.
Thank you so much for, can you hear me? Thank you so much for having me and being patient with your pinch hitter tonight. I know Matt wishes he were here rather than what he's dealing with at home. So I just wanted to update you on what's happening K-12. As you're aware, the Board of Ed goal is to evaluate and revise a digital citizenship curriculum K-12, and that's sort of a recursive process. Jonathan Adams outlined it very well, the whole system that we have for revising curriculum. So digital citizenship, again, just to remind you, there's a couple of our working definitions that we have. It's the skills, knowledge, and understanding to use the internet and other digital technology in an effective and positive way. And we're really looking for our students to be able to model ways that are to use the internet and online communication in safe, legal, and ethical ways. Again, to remind you, our national standards that we refer to as we're building the curriculum in digital citizenship are the ISTE standards, which stands for the International Society for Technology and Education, and they've got sort of 4 different areas that they've blocked out. They've broken them down to digital identity, talking about positive and safe behavior in technology, demonstrating an understanding and respect for intellectual property, and managing personal data. In addition, I should mention that the Connecticut Core Standards, as well as social studies standards, most areas have something that references back to these skills. So it would be hard-pressed to find a curricular area where you wouldn't find some kind of allusion to how we want our kids to be able to function and work online. And of course, in social studies, we've got our civic standards that these dovetail very nicely with. Moving along, these are our key concepts. We sort of use the concept and strand words interchangeably here, so you'll hear both of those. And these are the 6 different areas that we've broken out into for New Canaan, and you'll see the progression all the way from kindergarten through 12th grade. The X's are basically outlining where we have assured lessons and activities that build upon each other in each of those areas. So we've used a developmental approach, and you may see, for example, privacy and security all the way from kindergarten through 12th grade. Well, it's going to look a little different, the lessons in kindergarten as to 12th grade. So we evolve those up and hope to be responsive to students' needs. For example, there might be a stranger danger kind of lesson in kindergarten that might look very different at 10th to 12th grade. The same with cyberbullying, when you talk about just being nice to people and good behavior versus mean behavior versus something more along the bullying lines. Again, to refresh your memory, in the middle of this next slide, we see those 6 areas broken out for digital citizenship. And you can see flanking it to the left, the national health standards that Jonathan was alluding to, and then the SAPL, the 4 key concepts. I'm not going to walk you through each one, but I think a quick glance can see that decision-making is in all of them. How we communicate, our relationships, self-awareness, some of those key concepts and strands go across these 3 curricular areas and then into many of the areas that my colleagues work with as well. Since we follow understanding by design format for all of our units, they're all framed around essential questions, which is a way that we can get to some of the higher order thinking, being a little thought-provoking, and getting our students to really transfer these ideas. So yes, they're learning skills, but they're also in a world that is often unknown. The next steps, things are evolving very, very quickly. So to grapple with how you might perform or behave in a certain situation, and addressing these questions can really help our students to transfer some of that understanding from just being the specific skill. To briefly outline some of what we've done for elementary school, these are some of the essential questions the students might work with. I think you can see the skills embedded in them. What kinds of information should you keep to yourself when you use the internet? Keywords for search, which is that digital literacy component of digital citizenship. So just taking our regular citizenship and school learning behaviors and transferring those to what does that look like online. So moving on to middle school, now we have more computers, and we're very, very grateful to have all these computers. You'll see that our examples for digital citizenship now are more digital performance tasks. We're now in our 3rd year of implementation at Saks, and now each grade level has their own distinct unit. As Jonathan and Dr. Carenti were mentioning, sort of casting off, you first start with a few grades doing the same assured core lessons, and then the next year you sort of evolve. We've had that same process so that right now every grade 5-8 has their own units. They're tailored to be responsive to the ever-changing needs of students, and we review them each year. The curriculum continues to be built with the core key concepts and lessons at each grade. And as you heard before, there's some overlap between health and SAPL, so we're constantly working together with health, and Dr. Bliss and her counselors are also taking a look at who might deliver what kind of lesson and where that would be most appropriate. As you might have remembered, we've taken an integrative approach to the curriculum in grade 5, so it's not just social studies teachers, language arts teachers, science and math teachers are all sharing in that delivery of the core lessons that we've identified. It can be a challenge to get that many teachers all aligned with the core lessons, but the conversations and a chance to really have that assured vocabulary running across, that consistency really makes it worth that effort to do. In grade 6, we have a little bit more of a middle school approach where we use workshop time and rotation, just as we do with students rotating through health, math, science, and language arts. On the right part of the slide, you'll see a student public service announcement. It's just part of their public service announcement, showing how they used a stoplight for a way to remember some of the key concepts that they've learned. The performance task in grade 6 asks students to make PSAs that are appropriate for a grade 5 or 6 audience, teaching others about the skills that they need as a digital citizen. So discussion is really built into the curriculum at all grade levels. Teachers will use articles such as the one featured in the Scholastic magazine, hold Socratic seminars and debates about current issues. In addition, students sometimes role play and discuss different scenarios and how they might respond. And the goal is to make these lessons really connect to students' personal and work lives. In grade 7, for example, students use a rubric. They learn to use a rubric to evaluate apps and platforms, giving them a score or a grade. And the goal is not to teach our children about every single app or platform that they might encounter, but really about that criteria that's necessary, that no matter what that app or platform is, they've got a set of criteria that they can use to evaluate whether it's safe, what the rights are, what the safety policy is, and that really helps them to give them those tools that are transferable to a variety of situations. We're finding in grade 8 that lessons are becoming more integrated into core content. We'll have teachers say, well, wait a minute, we created that plagiarism lesson. I think we need it now, and we need it now for everyone. So let's do it now. So they're taking the lessons out, and then they're all doing them. So we're constantly having to figure out what lesson is really going to meet their needs, and I think that's a really nice dilemma to be in, that people see that the lessons are useful and that we need them in real time. So we're making those adjustments as we go. Student voice continues to be very, very important in grades 6 through 8. This year, Jonathan Adams and Dr. Bliss participated in some of our focus groups that we've been having. The past few years, we've done them just at the end of the year. We decided to do them at the end of each quarter and really poll our students while it's very fresh in their minds. One of the questions asked in the focus group was what students might change about the course and what they might add. And students actually cited several topics they'd like to discuss more about, such as spam, how to recognize spam, fake news. They've also asked for more time in discussing netiquette and online behavior and how to really communicate with different audiences. Another issue that's come up that there needs to be more conversation about is sleep issues around devices. How close to bedtime should you be using that device? And that's come up from teachers. We've heard some parents say that, and our students are saying that as well. So they're all very aware that this is something that we need to discuss, which fits very nicely, I think, into some of the wellness. Students are also have referred to specific lessons that had an impact on them and had wonderful and interactive ideas on how to really make the course more exciting. And I'm excited to tell you that this spring we hope to have our first student design team. Students are really interested in having a say in how they learn about some of these topics. So in order to reach more students, we also created a survey asking students questions about the lessons and delivery and whether we were meeting their needs. And one question that you'll see up on the right is, have your behaviors or thoughts changed at all as a result of the lessons or activities? And this is in digital citizenship course per se. And we were really heartened to see that 64.7% of our 7th graders, just in quarter 3, said that it did change specifically their behavior or thoughts, and they were able to point to exact ways that their behaviors had changed. Grade 6, just if if you like the statistics of it. 59% responded that their behavior changed, and 38% was all for grade 8, but we think it might be partly due to the nature of the lessons. They're really applying, so they don't even see that they're learning. It's all part of that application process. So I don't think that there's not as many separate, discrete lessons. They're all sort of blended in as they do their performance task, which is some more choice and research. But we're going to continue to apply and reinforce skills and continue to be responsive to what they're saying that they need as well. Here's just a few comments that students gave us about how their behaviors changed. In addition, some of the general comments were, for example, one said, before digital citizenship, I didn't know what the computer knows and what you do and gives you ads based on it. So, student wording. I'm more careful when I choose a good and credible website. I learned about the consequences of giving out personal information. And another said, I liked all the little hints and reminders on how to keep your information safe and that kind of stuff. It's cool because the hints can be very helpful. So students are much more aware of the complexity of being a citizen online. And I can't say enough how proud I am of the students and their voice and how they're able to articulate what they need and what works for them and the delivery system that works for them. And it's been really fun to listen to them and work with them. And I feel like there's this partnership with our students that's growing, which is really, really wonderful. So I want to just tell you now about high school. Move on to high school. So high school, Dr. Correnti mentioned the cohorts. We're really looking at our cohorts and what they need and when, and we know that we're moving to the high school group that's had digital citizenship for quite a few years, and that's going to need some changing too and some revision. The current junior year class, as was mentioned, was part year 1 of implementation, and looking at them compared to our grade 7. And our grade 7 is a really powerful year. They've had it since 5th grade, and they're really ready to have a voice. So watching that cohort go through is going to be very interesting. So some of the work that's being done at the high school is looking more at that integrative approach. It's not those discrete, as many of the discrete lessons, as much as it is identifying those places where we can integrate. So for example, as the junior research project is going to be one way, do we have specific lessons that need to be assured in that? Helping students distinguish between opinion journalism and straight journalism is another area that we need to continue to look at. Social studies, ELA across subject areas. Another area is where ads end and true content begins on a site. Some of the native advertising, some of those kinds of issues are things to talk about. So there's continued need to work with teachers and departments to identify some of these consistent opportunities in grades 10 through 12. And to also build teachers' awareness of how they can incorporate the conversation of digital citizenship into their regular classes. So where next? We're going to continue the process to review our K-12 digital citizenship sequence to ensure vertical alignment, continue to gather feedback through focus group conversations and surveys where appropriate, and continue those cross-curricular conversations across all subject areas, and continue professional learning for staff, because I think that's an area that, as things grow by leaps and bounds, that teachers are also going to need support in the work to make sure that they feel comfortable and secure in helping to deliver some of these lessons. And I will take any questions that you have.
Thank you, Mary. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Hannah? Jen, sorry.
All right, so thank you so much. That was so great. Even at the last minute, you were able to pull it off, so thank you. And this is so incredibly important for all of our kids, especially, you know, with everything going on in our world, and every day it's changing, and so it's so important to kind of stay on top of all of this. So I know I should know this, but so like, in the elementary school, I know they actually get pulled aside and they actually have class. Like, I'm not
Yes.
sure how often, but then at Saks, is it more like the workshop model? Is that one that's,
Yeah, so fifth grade has sort of its own model where there's set lessons, there are assured lessons that each subject area will take, and they'll either do that in workshop or in their core curricular area. There's 3 or 4 lessons, and they blend that in a certain, all agreed to a certain month that they're going to deliver those lessons. In grades 6 through 8, it's a workshop rotation, so each student would get that digital citizenship on non-ensemble days, so 4 out of the 6 days for a quarter. But it's a different quarter than health is offered, and we felt at the time that that was a good thing because health can then pick up and reinforce or vice versa.
and then the high school, like you mentioned, the junior research project, which is actually so good because, I remember going through like encyclopedias and all that. These guys were just like, typing away. And I remember one of them being like, well, we can't get any of our resources from Wikipedia. Like, that's one of the stipulations of the paper. And so I think that's so great. So is it more focused in their classes versus like, it's not in connections or anything? I mean, this is more
There are a series of assured lessons in health
health.
that they get in 9th grade, and now we're trying to sort of blow that up, I guess, or expand that a little bit into what's happening in grades 10 through 12 to reinforce some of those skills. So Junior Research Project is one place that is a great opportunity because juniors all do it,
Right.
that there might be some lessons that we can then integrate and weave in addition to just regular conversations that might happen in ELA or social studies or other subject areas.
So what we're doing is we're finding that we're breaking apart the standards that we teach within the high school. And so it's once again relying back to those department chairs. So you work with the librarians and you work with the tech integrators at the high school who really help to break apart those standards. What did those standards mean? What did those standards look like? And how would that be integrated possibly within ELA or social studies or another content area? And then they work with the department chairs and the departments to help that integration. But what we're really uncovering K-12 is that the more the teachers know these standards, the more that they're able to just kind of reinforce it. So even in a 4th grade classroom, if they understand that they're being taught digital citizenship and digital literacy in their technology class, which is one of their specials. When they're working in Google, they're able to then reinforce and remind them that Google's a place where we work, where we respect each other's ideas, where we comment positively on each other's work, we don't respond negatively. So it's all of those reminders that the classroom teacher then reinforces. And then you hold that true up in the high school. So once again, when they're teaching a research project or they're doing something in journalism, it's being able to integrate those standards into what they're just doing at that time.
Yeah, no, it's really great. So thank you.
Sherry?
So thank you, very informative presentation. And as a parent of 3 kids in the public schools, I think we've always been ahead in where it relates to digital citizenship. My question, or I guess it's really more of a comment, is I think one of the most important intersections between the digital literacy and the health literacy is around the mental and emotional health, and really, our growing experience and body of research around how, especially the visual social media platforms, are negatively affecting our kids' self-esteem. And I think there's probably a gender divide on this topic. I think it's actually impacting our girls more because they use the visual platforms more. So I would just be curious in hearing if we're doing anything specific around that, and I mean, even just whether it be discussion groups or just really addressing that intersection.
Yeah, absolutely. We have met, Dr. Bliss, Mr. Adams, and I all met with the counselors, and we actually developed some lessons about that, those specific topics that are delivered. There's 2 or 3 lessons that counselors will push in to have those discussions with students, realizing that some of those images and the power of those, yes, there is some gender divide, but from what kids are saying, it sort of, they're all impacted by those kinds of issues, but we felt that it would be good to co-teach with counselors and to have that as a lesson that would be a shared lesson.
So that's integrated for all students or on an as needed?
Grade 7 everyone has the lessons. Grade 7 and 8 last year had them. We did not have a chance to create any more for grade 8. So right now that stands in grade 7 with a set of assured lessons that we hope to, I know it's on our calendar to do for next year, to have grade 8 then have their own set of lessons.
Okay. Other questions? Marie?
I actually have two things. One is kind of technical. As far as when you addressed digital footprint with the students, and this is probably for Brian as well, Digication is out there, and there's no way for those students who've graduated to clean it up because they were set up with email addresses that are no longer active. So can we clean those up? I mean, I know my daughter's stuff is out there, and some of it you read, it's cute, but it's also kind of like immature work that doesn't need to be out there.
So we've
there's-
we've had students who have graduated who've actually contacted our ICT department and asked for things to be taken down or for them to have access to their account for a window of time where they can actually go in and clean up their account. So I just remember a student reaching out to us this past fall about some poetry that they had written, and it was really cute at the time in middle school, but she would like it changed. So we gave her access for 30 days, and she was able to go in and adjust it, clean it up, and then we closed out the account. So we do have students who have contacted us. At the end of every year, we do remind the seniors that they do have an opportunity to go in and clean up their Digication before we close it. We usually give them that summertime to go in, clean it up, and then we close out those email accounts for them. But there are kids that become very busy, and they're heading off to college, and sometimes they're not thinking about that until they're actually in college. And so we just ask them to contact us, and then we just open it up, they clean it up, and then we close it for them.
Well, some of these go back to like 2008, like there's thousands of them, so
Yeah.
I don't think they will do that. Is there a way to do it at an enterprise level, between the school and Digication? Just
To shut down the accounts?
to
essentially?
do something, at least make it private, because they would never know. And I'm sure when they were set up, it was when it first came out, 8th grade, 9th grade. They probably didn't even realize they were clicking on make public or whatever it is that they clicked on. So just one suggestion. And secondly,
We can take a look at that.
okay,
We
thanks.
could look into that. That's some,
The second thing is with Facebook, I know a lot of school groups, baseball teams, rowing, a lot of teams use it as a method of having conversation within the team, but parents aren't really part of that. Is there any way to let parents know which teams are using Facebook pages? Do you know, does anyone?
Those are generated by the kids, not by the coach. Those are the coach has their own communication, but the Facebook groups are usually kids communicating with other kids. It's not a coach involved in that. I mean, as far as what
That's my experience as well. It's
our
usually the
experience is
captains.
not,
Even
yeah.
all details are going through that.
Yeah.
The kids are getting information from Facebook, parents are
From
getting
the-
it
but
from
they
the
get it from
school.
the-
Well,
It's from
the
their
parents, the parents of the captains have their own communication platform, and that, I mean, having done that, the kids want their own, social side of it, and then, anything pertinent for meets or dinners or dues or anything that the coach needs communicated to parents, that goes through the parent. At least that's been my experience in, having multiple captains in multiple
It kind of
sports.
crosses the line because it's school business, but it's, when you speak to the footprint, the digital footprint, it might be something worth incorporating, because I do think sometimes they're communicating things through Facebook that they wouldn't say in person, so just
We
something.
do
So
address
I'm
how
probably
you might
glad to-
respond.
I'll be glad to look into it a little bit
Yeah,
and to
thanks.
talk to Jay and to sort of to get an overview of how that communication flow works.
That would be
both
great.
ways. I'd be glad to do that. Sure.
Penny?
So I guess a little bit off topic, but I do have one question on topic as well. So there always seems to be a divide. We're really good and we're really in communication with our students through graduation day. And then a lot of times topics will come up on the Board of Ed and we'll say, gee, it'd be really nice to know what our graduates think about this. And, Maria raised a good topic about how to clean up some of these files. Do we, as a matter of course, or have we considered collecting an email address from every student when they leave and building that database? Because pretty much most of our students go on to college, they all get a college, they mostly know where they're going by graduation, and they have a college email address at some point. So I don't know, it just seemed to me that it might be an easy thing for us to do that would facilitate a lot of
So I believe our counselors,
these
I believe, are
issues.
doing that through Naviance as students graduate. I believe they're asking them for a new email address, and they do ask them to complete sort of feedback surveys and things like that. And we have been talking to our counselors about, again, going to them after year 1, 2, 3 to
Right.
get feedback. How does it work? We hear from the recent graduates when they come back around the holidays, but then to continue that conversation. So I know our counselors are doing some work around that now.
Okay, oh, great. And then my question, Mary, thank you for your great presentation, is because so much of the work that we're doing on this curriculum in the high school is integrating it into the regular classroom for grades 10 through 12, how do we know how successful we're being and where the holes are in education for the students?
That's a great question. I'm going to have to defer to Mr. Salvestrini to figure that out, but I think that's part of his fact-finding process that he's outlined for grades 10 through 12, that identifying those places, but I think along with identifying those places is how are we going to keep track of monitoring this, whether it's focus groups or surveys or whatever it might be, that developing some kind of instrument for measuring that would go hand in hand.
Okay, great.
Other questions? Okay. That was great. Thank you, Mary. All right, moving on to our Be Well initiative with Dr. Lutzy and Mr. Cass.
I think I will defer to Mr. Cass here. For a couple of years, the board has talked about a wellness initiative in the district, and we've talked about it in the context of budget and insurance and, what can we do to bring in a wellness initiative, in part to help control costs, but also in part to develop that culture, a healthy culture around our system, our school district, and to promote those positive practices. Well, I'm very proud that this year we formally launched our initiative, our wellness initiative, and I'll let Gary give the details. And some members of our wellness initiative are right here in the room with us. I'm sure Gary will share that as well. But we started small, with a large group, but with sort of limited aspirations, knowing how difficult it can be to get such a program off the ground. And since day one, we've really flown with this, thanks to all of the participants that are a part of it. The partnership has been excellent across the district, and we want to invite the board to join us at our Be Well Expo. But let me let Gary fill in a lot of the details here, and something that I'm very proud of, and I think that we all should be very proud of the great work that's going into this initiative.
Well, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful journey to work with a large group that represent all of the employee groups here in the New Canaan Public Schools. We've got 22 members on this committee. We have Joe Spurgeon that serves on the committee as a consultant to us, as well as Jerome, a Cigna representative. Cigna has given us funding to promote health and wellness within our school district. So we began by pulling together a committee, kind of a well-rounded committee, teachers, administrators, all of the non-certified staff, they're a part of it, and we really tried to pull this committee together, and we began in September just by meeting and talking about this wellness initiative. Joe Spurgeon was there, as well as Cigna, to try to help guide us, to talk about what other districts are doing out there, and it just kind of evolved, where we learned about what the options could be for a wellness committee and how we could reach every single employee in the New Canaan Public Schools, and really think about how to promote this whole idea of wellness. So The committee worked together really well, and I should say that, you know, members of the committee, Tracy and Jonathan and Dave Gussich and Zoe are members sitting here, but you know, the nursing staff is involved. The union representation is there with presidents that serve on the committee. So one of the first things that the committee wanted to do was to kind of survey all staff. So we worked on creating a survey, asking what kinds of personal health improvements that folks would like to make this year. We asked them what kind of programs they might be interested in, and we just used the survey as a vehicle for trying to decide kind of next steps for this committee, how to promote this. We came up with our kind of guiding principle of striving to educate, promote, and support the well-being of all New Canaan public school employees by fostering and inspiring healthy lifestyles. So that's something that we worked on and tried to promote. And it's been work since September, and it's all culminating with, I guess it's kind of an oxymoron to say this is our kickoff event on next week, but it is to try to really promote health and wellness among all of our employees. The survey really helped us, and we had 350 responses to the survey, so we thought it was well represented. And so the committee decided to move forward with this Be Well Expo. I gave you this flyer, designed by Jonathan, by the way, along with our stickers as well. So thank you for doing that, Jonathan. We really appreciate that. And so we have come to the place where on April 24th from 2 to 6, right here in the high school cafeteria, we'll be sponsoring our Be Well Expo. And we have many different opportunities for all of our employees. We'll be offering things that afternoon on mindfulness, fitness, stretching. A nutrition consultant will be there if you're interested in getting some a blood pressure screening or a chair massage. We hope to see you there. We have workshops on de-stressing at your desk. There'll be cooking classes. There'll be you can even learn how to row, of all things. We'll have yoga, meditation, reflexology, an acupuncturist, health coach. So we're really trying to have a wonderful event right here to help promote health and wellness among our employees. And we will have vendors there, and we'll offer door prizes. And it's been a committee that is extremely excited about the possibilities. And so to see that kind of excitement and to spread it out to every single employee, and it's open to all employees here in our district, whether you are using our health insurance or not. We didn't want to draw any lines. Health is for everyone that works here. So we're pretty excited about this event. So you're all invited. Please join us. Come for a chair massage, no charge. And I did give you some stickers, and we'll have T-shirts and door prizes, and we're really looking forward to it. So it's a great event.
And I want to thank Gary, because right from the start, he stepped up to chair the committee for us and to share some feedback that I've received directly from both Joe Spurgeon and Jerome, who's representing Cigna, as Gary mentioned. Both of them are astounded by the progress that we've made just this year. They said that groups meet for years in order to get to the place that we're already at. And I think that's a testament to Gary's leadership with it and everybody that's on the committee. I mean, we really believe this is important, and it really does align with our work around positive psychology, our work around emotional intelligence. I mean, this is sort of another component of all of that approach in our school district that we've taken throughout the course of the year to support everyone involved in our schools, to help them to be their best selves every day as they work with our kids in order to continue to nurture and grow the positive work that we do each and every day. So it's really impressive work. It's a stunningly committed committee. They meet at 7 a.m. Prior to the school day, and I roll in about 7:30. And but they meet early in the morning. They get all of this together, make their plans, and then go off to their schools, in time to meet with their kids. And we get reminders regularly from Ashley and the notes and everything all together. It's very impressive and fascinating to think of what we'll be able to accomplish in the couple of years ahead. So I again want to just mention it to the board and make sure you all know you're invited to join us. I like the de-stress at your desk. Maybe it can be just de-stress at your board table, as we sit up here. But the work is really important work, and I'm glad that we've got it underway. And I know we've talked about it each of the last couple of years in budget about getting something going, and then the budget process ends and we sort of forget about it and move on to all the urgent things in our day. And we said this is something that's not only urgent, it's important, and we really need to prioritize it. So great job, Karen, and committee members. Thank you.
Do I have any questions or comments? Penny?
I think this is fabulous. We have talked about this for a long time. It can only do good things for the district and our employees, and eventually, who knows, could even bring down health insurance costs. You never know, so it's a win-win. And I just look forward to hearing after you get together and meet and find out what you liked about the expo and what you think your next steps are, getting updated on those, because I think this is just so impressive and wonderful work.
Thank you.
So I have a question, because I saw some walking groups before school. Is that part of this, or is that completely a different initiative?
No, it is actually part of it. We have representatives on this committee from every school, and there are many events happening already across the district on a school-wide basis.
So tell
you
us.
could walk at the high school, or you could play basketball at 6 a.m. if you'd like. Still trying to make that one. Many activities are happening around the district. So we're trying to collect that information and really get our handle on what's happening out there, and there's actually quite a bit.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, I look forward to hearing about more as well. And, in addition to sort of the health and, I think the well-being part of it is as important, it sounds like, and great staff connection. I think that's great that you get to get together in a not as education-focused environment. So that's great. Did Hazel?
I just had my sneezing and blowing a happy spring. Since I have about all these allergies, I noticed all the flowers, and I was so happy until all of a sudden I realized my allergies, but I don't think that's part of what we're talking about. I have for years also thought this would be something really terrific, because it's hard as a teacher. You don't get much chance to get out of your classroom, and to be able to have some sort of have a physical way to be able to live longer, everything we read is true, and to be able to have a happier life as a result with fewer physical things attacking you. And I also had this little bit at the end. What you do with this is modeling for the kids. I don't know if you've ever noticed, but particularly the girls, and not to be sexist, it may be the boys too, but I hear the girls discussing more. Did you notice what shoes the teacher had on today? Did you see how that sweater went with her skirt or whatever it was? They really notice what we're doing. And when we're modeling something, such as taking care of ourselves and what we're doing to physical exercise, it's another teaching method that goes in to make sure that they understand it. It is important, but it's hard, I know, to fit it into your days, so thank you for doing it, on behalf of your families, too.
Anyone else?
Well, I just want to plug the Twitter handle. Is it a handle on Twitter? Yes, thank you. All right. Which is BeWellNCPS. And the logo at the top was painstakingly developed and in collaboration with our art department here at the high school and some other folks. So Be Well NCPS, so at Twitter it's at Be Well NCPS, and please feel free to follow and check it out. And if you know of or see anything interesting, cool, or innovative going on with health and wellness around organizations or what have you, feel free to tag us, the Be Well NCPS, and we'll take a look. Great. How'd I do? All right, I pay attention. Very good.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Gary.
Great. Thanks, guys.
All right. And thanks, Dr. Cote.
That's pretty cool, right?
That is cool.
All right.
I loved it.
All right, so moving on to our budget update, Dr. Letzi.
Sorry.
That's all right. Yes, briefly, just to share with the board, it seems like in some ways so long ago and in other ways so recently, but it was Thursday night just prior to spring break that the town council met to vote on the budget. The budget was approved as was presented to them from the Board of Finance, which is the Board of Education's operating budget was ultimately reduced to $900,000 as we'd been discussing. We did have some slight changes in our capital budget as well, where initially when we developed the budget, we had talked about having the oil tank over at West and Saks removed this summer. But after that, they started having conversations about getting natural gas over to West. So we thought about and decided that it would be prudent to change, instead of doing Saks and West, to do Saks and South School instead with the remediation this summer, which brought down the capital request because we also were planning an additional $300,000 to redo the parking lot over at West, which we won't do until now. Now that would be on for next summer, instead of the summer of 2018, the summer of 2019, when the time is up with those oil tanks, and I won't go into the painstaking detail. I know you've been following along. So that was a slight change in the capital request for this year, and essentially it was just shifting something that was in for summer 2019, putting that into summer of 2018, which is the south oil tank, and then moving out from 18 to 19 the west oil tank. It was just a swap. And then again, because of the parking lot piece, which we wouldn't do the parking lot until we do the oil tank because one is so connected to the other, it wouldn't make sense to do that. On the operating side, again, it's the $900,000 reduction from the Board of Education's request, which I will be working with the administration to develop some recommendations for the Board of Ed to consider at an upcoming meeting. That $900,000 did equal a 2.45% year-over-year increase. And as you know, the significant cost drivers in our budget were both salaries and benefits. I have seen or heard folks saying that 80% of the budget is salaries, and that's not quite accurate because it's the 82% is the combination of salaries and benefits together. So knowing that significant driver itself was pushing on the budget, specifically the insurance, we're going to continue to take a look at that. We're going to continue to monitor it. As you know, every month we go out, we can get slightly more accurate projections, working with Joe, and we hope to have something to bring before the board in the next couple of weeks.
All right. Any questions for Dr. Letzi? Okay. Thank you. Moving on to statement of accounts with Ms. Haberman. Thank you for.
You are welcome. Hello, everybody. First, I don't know if I'm offended or happy that everybody got up and left before I got to my kind of watched the mass exodus and said, okay. So, Dr. Keating is unavailable tonight, so I am going to present our financials through March 31st. It is hard to believe that we're 3/4 of the way through our fiscal year already. It just flies by. Having said that, we have expended 66.6% of our budget so far, with another 28.8% encumbered. We still have 4.5% left that is unencumbered. The majority of that is salaries that are not conducive to being encumbered, such as drivers, monitors, subs, people that give us timesheets versus set salaries over time. We also book our payroll taxes as they are paid out, so we don't encumber those either. There's also some additional tuition reimbursements and retirement supplements that are not encumbered, and those will come through in the next couple of months. When you look through, you'll see that we are showing a shortfall of about $43,000 in tuition out of district for SPED. We are keeping a close eye on that, and already in April, that number has actually increased to around 200,000. We're also watching unanticipated facility repairs, and when we can, we defer those, but we can't always do that. So sometimes we just have to take care of the buildings. Regardless of all the aforementioned items, we do not anticipate any shortfalls in the overall budget and think that we should be able to stay within our budget allocation. At the end of the packet, you're also going to see financials for our other funds: school lunch facilities, facility rental, donations, summer school, and grants. We are paying close attention to school lunch and trying to really look at how we spend all of the money. We have changed some of the purveyors since Michelle has started with us, and we'll have a lot more details as to how everything's playing out at the end of the year. And that is pretty much everything, unless you have questions for me.
And there are no transfers this
transfers.
month, so there's no action item around it.
Nobody's going to ask me anything?
Well, give me a second. Any questions for Tracy? You know, I actually, sorry, it's probably not for you, it's probably for Darlene. I do have a question.
I know you're listening, though.
Yeah. So Tracy said that we'll probably be able to stay within our overall budget. Does that mean we won't need to go ask for the excess cost grant money, or I was getting.
Yeah, do you mind if
Yeah,
I
go ahead.
start and Dar can
Yeah.
fill in the details? So just as a reminder, a few years ago, we did what was called gross up the out-of-district tuition account. Students that are considered high-cost placements, which are 4.5 times our calculated per pupil expense. If students, for various reasons, because due to outplacements or others, cost more than 4.5 times, the state then has what's called the excess cost grant reimbursement, which is a same-year reimbursement grant. A few years ago, many school districts net that out of their budget. And a few years ago, when working with the town, we decided to do what we call gross up our budget, which means that our budget represents what we can best estimate or forecast what the costs will be for the following year, with the understanding that when we have students that fall into that category and that money, the excess cost grant is returned, that it is returned directly to the town. And then the agreement is if we wound up going over our budget in this line, then that money is made available for the school district to access in order to be made whole, because of the unpredictable nature of special education costs. Am I explaining that clearly? Okay. So I can let them talk about the specifics, but just wanted to give that background information. I would anticipate where we are today that we would be able to end our year without having to access that money. However, it is just mid-April, and there are plenty of months to go. So we couldn't make a commitment to that until we get closer to the end.
And I think I can't help myself. I have to make a comment on this. Because we gross it up, we take the expense on the Board of Education budget line at a full cost, and the town gets the reimbursement. So when you say that most towns net, it would be to their benefit in their overall year-to-year, comparison, because you get the net out in the.
Sure. So that check typically is around. We anticipate that excess cost reimbursement grant coming back this year will be around $1 million.
Right. Just I can't help myself.
And just so I know, on this, which line, where do we budget,
Sure.
and where are we on that particular line item?
It's in the contracted services section.
Actually, it's in
Sorry,
purchase services,
service.
tuition out of district, primarily, although so it's the 3.703 on page 4, purchase services, tuition out of district. However, there are other lines that feed into the total cost of a student that then could calculate for the reimbursement, including transportation, including other services. And again, I'm speaking when I have the expert here
You're
next to me.
doing very well, though, actually.
Well,
The only thing that I
you've
would-
taught me well.
The only thing that I would add to what you said is, yes, it is April. Brian's right about that, but Joanne and I, and actually Tracy and Laura, met recently to review every line item of my budget and where we are. And we will continue to do that probably about every 2 weeks. And Brian's right about other accounts feeding into the out-of-district tuition account, and that's what we're looking at. So there are some students who are out of district that we still cover the costs for things like related services and the transportation piece and some of the consultancies. And 1 or 2 of those line items are down, and so we're looking to try to make sure that that balances out. However, it is April, and spring is typically the season where if I'm going to be doing mediations, then we do have 1 or 2 of those scheduled, so. But we're watching it very closely.
Thank you. Maria?
Of the Cigna grant, does that show up in here at all? You
For the
mentioned for the
wellness?
wellness, yeah.
No, I don't think it would. It's really going directly into that program. So it's really, they are, if you look at the flyer, you see a couple of door prizes that are there. That's being funded by Cigna.
Oh, okay.
So they're really making contribution directly to these efforts, but we're not receiving that in and then expending it from the district. They're actually purchasing them directly and sort of giving them to us.
Any other questions? Well, thank you, Tracy. It was nice to see you.
2 pitch hitters tonight.
I know.
Yeah,
That's
folks
great.
did a great job.
That's great. Okay. So, we have arrived at the comments from the public. I don't think I see anyone. I don't want to miss anyone, but, so announcements and future business. Dr. Lutzy.
Sure. So again, welcome back from spring break, everyone. Our next meeting will be May 7th, and our items proposed for the agenda are an update and discussion around the standards-based grading, which we've had at the middle school in science for a bit. So to get updated on that and to have that dialogue together. And also, we thought it'd be a good time for an update just on the state statute for high school graduation credits and the requirements around that. As you know, we've had a group at the high school that's had a few false starts because they've started to build some momentum, and then the state has changed their expectations or their requirements. So we thought that a fresh start with that group would be a good idea, and that a good way to do that would just be sharing with the board what the state is putting forward as far as the graduation credit requirements for students to graduate, and then some conversation just about some of the initial thinking that we've had around that. Connecticut, as a preview, Connecticut has really moved away from being prescriptive around the credits and more general around a certain number in certain areas, humanities, STEM, others, without being very specific about what courses would be taken to meet those requirements. So we'll talk about that with the board a little bit and get some initial feedback and some direction.
Thank you.
I participated last year and just didn't know if Jen wanted to plug the color run, which I think is going to be before our next
Oh.
Board of Ed meeting.
Oh, gosh.
Thank you.
I forgot about that, yeah.
When's the color run?
It's the 28th.
At the board
Okay.
meeting?
Sure.
Okay.
We're letting you do that. It's
So-
all for the
Is that
benefit of the schools.
Yes, I thought we mentioned it last year.
We might have.
I'm sure we did.
Would you
It's
like me to
all
run?
health
Yes.
and
But I
wellness.
was
It's
just-
a
me too.
run.
Actually, it's funny, they're actually going to talk about the color run, I think, at the Health and Wellness, because David reached out to us.
Sure. At the expo, you mean?
Yeah, at the
Yeah.
expo, sorry.
Yeah.
Do you want me to say?
Yes.
Or do you want
Sure,
me?
go
Okay.
ahead.
So, so the Color Run is April 28th, and it's a community event. We're going to have 8 color stations. We have 8 different sponsors, and people run through and get color thrown on them, and it's so fun. And little kids, all the athletes are going to be there, and all the money raised goes to the New Canaan Scholarship Foundation. So that's to deserving seniors to help with college costs. So it's a great event, and we hope that everyone will come. April 28th, Saturday, next Saturday. It's going to be really warm, I'm sure. And dry.
Nicer than the Boston
Yeah.
Marathon today.
Right. Well, and just in case somebody doesn't know, the New Canaan High School Scholarship Foundation, it does generously give grants to students solely based on need. And it really does help students that we've got every high school has needs. We have students that do have financial need here in the high school, and the New Canaan High School Scholarship Foundation truly makes a difference for those students in their lives. And every year, when I was principal here, and even now as superintendent, I'll receive letters back and cards back saying thank you for the generosity of the Scholarship Foundation. It truly does fill that gap for some students that really need it so that they can be successful as they go off to school. So it does truly make a difference in kids' lives, and purely based on need as those grants are awarded. So it's a very worthy cause. Hope everybody can get involved.
And you don't have to run, you're allowed to walk.
It can be a color walk.
It can
Yes,
be a color
yes.
walk.
Sure, online.
Yes, and I'm sure there's needs for volunteers, too.
There are.
Yeah, I just want to echo what Brian said, and I had the good fortune of attending the breakfast for the grant recipients last year, and I was surprised at how many kids were in need, and it is a wonderful thing that this community does for those kids, so, anyway.
Yes.
All right, so if I could get a motion to adjourn. Penny, second. Hazel, all those in favor? It's unanimous, thank you.